I will call this meeting to order, and this is the extended meeting of the Transportation Public Works Committee that was initiated earlier today per the usual schedule, but extended for this very important matter before us. Today we are taking public comment on the Southwest LRT Corridor Memoranda of Understanding and Municipal Approval of the LRT plans. There's a series of actions associated with that. Just as a reminder to people, we won't be taking final action today. We will continue this to a special meeting of the Public Works Committee, which will be just before the Committee of the Whole, which includes the full council. This will allow us time to take all comments, both verbal and those who are submitted written comments, into consideration before final determination of the body. I am Councilmember Reich. I'll be chairing this committee. I am joined by a full complement of the committee, including Council Members Yang, Council Vice President Glidden, Council Member Palmisano, Council Member Bender, and Council Member Gordon. We are also, of course, joined by Council Member Goodman, who has spent a long time on this topic matter with a whole range of stakeholders, and she is, of course, continuing that commitment tonight by being present. I will also remind people that we do have overflow capacity in room 319, which is fully equipped with audio visual for those who wish to participate in waiting for your turn to speak or just wanted to take in the commentary as it proceeds. So that's 319 across the hall. I will, with that, open the public hearing after we have a presentation by those who are from the project team and from other transit officials of the city. I will yield the floor to our Director of Transportation Public Works, Director Kaki.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and committee members. Yes, we have two presenters this evening prior to the public hearing. Jim Alexander from Metro Transit, and Jim is the Director of Design and Engineering for the Southwest LRT project. Jim will present an overview of the submitted preliminary design of the Minneapolis portion of the project. And then following Mr. Alexander, Peter Wingenius, the Policy Director for Mayor Hodges, will discuss the two memorandums of understanding.
Thank you, Director Kaki. And as the presenters approach the podium, I'd like to acknowledge that we are joined by Mayor Hodges.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chair, committee members. Thank you for the opportunity on behalf of the council for us to provide this presentation and for you to hold this public hearing on this project. So I have a number of slides that I would like to go through before I hand it over to Peter Wingenius, and then we would begin the public testimony. So tonight's purpose is to hear from the public of citizens of Minneapolis about the project, the design elements within the city. This is a map of the full alignment all the way out to Eden Prairie, ending at Mitchell Station. We will be focusing on Westlake Station and moving eastward to 21st Street Station, Penn, Van Wyck, and Royalston Station as we move into downtown Minneapolis. So a little bit about the project as a whole. There are 17 stations currently programmed. That includes the 21st Street Station at grade and about 15.8 miles of new track all the way out to Eden Prairie. It does include one shallow tunnel that would be south of the Kenilworth corridor, and that would be about 2,200 feet in length. And under this arrangement that we have discussed with the city, that the northern tunnel would not be a part of this. We would be at grade north of the channel. And there's an operations and maintenance facility located out in Hopkins as part of the program. The overall budget is $1.653 billion. So this is the statute that we have to follow by as far as Met Council goes in terms of these LRT projects. Minnesota state statute there you see there. It really allows an opportunity for the cities and the county of the host areas for where the alignment is going to run to weigh in on the preliminary plans. So as part of that process, it really started in July 10, where we issued some revisions to the Minneapolis segment of the plans to the city and the county, and we held a joint hearing with the county on the 13th, and we're here tonight on the 19th. By statute, we need to have a weigh-in from you all and your other council members by September 27th. So to date, we have received approval from St. Louis Park, Eden Prairie, Minnetonka, Hopkins, and Hennepin County, actually for the full alignment as of this morning. They approved the Minneapolis segment actually earlier this afternoon. And so what remains is we will, as indicated, we would be, this would be before the council on the 29th of this month to consider the Minneapolis segment. So we go back to May, June timeframe. There were a lot of discussions with the city representatives and the Met Council on this project, focusing on design components as well as other elements. And there were a number of meetings, and a session was facilitated by the retired federal judge Arthur Boylan. The outcome reflects two memorandums of understanding. The first that I'll cover tonight is the really relays around the physical design components of the project. The second revolves around the property ownership within the Kenilworth corridor that Peter Wagenius will follow. So for the design agreement, really 5 key items came out of those discussions. The first is to include enhanced non-motorized connections around the stations within the city. And what that is really just to really fill in the gaps of the sidewalk network, improve that walkability, improve the ability for peds and bicycles to move around the stations within the city. The second piece is to improve and enhance the park-like setting of the Kenilworth corridor. We have committed to hire a landscape architect that the city would be part of that evaluation panel to select that landscape architect to really take a look at the Kenilworth corridor and what could that become with the LRT and the trail and, of course, the freight rail in that corridor there. As I indicated, it reinstates the at-grade 21st Street station and eliminates the shallow tunnel north of the channel. And it does capture $30 million in savings overall to the project budget. So the physical design components, as they're really defined as we look at the municipal consent piece, are these elements here. Essentially, the plans that are before you to consider are really the line and grade of the LRT. It also includes the location, the orientation of the platforms for the stations and the freight rail pieces, and also talks to roadway features at a fairly high level. Just want to emphasize there's much more design to be done, presuming we do get approval on municipal consent. It just doesn't end here. We continue to work with your city staff, both CPED and Public Works, to refine those designs as we get to 100% completion. So to give you a gauge, these plans are around 15% completion. So we'll start at Westlake and move eastward. The areas encircled there, as you see them, are intended to depict those intersections where we're looking to enhance the safety within those intersections and provide ADA access as far as the ped ramps go. We are also looking to see, as you see, a dashed line going along Lake and Excelsior and into the roadway grid of Abbott and Chowan. We're looking to improve upon the sidewalk network, really the ability for folks to get in and around on foot and on bicycle through this area around the station. As part of the base project, we already had vertical circulation. Those would be elevators and stairs from the Westlake Street Bridge going down to the station platform level. And you can see the station platform in kind of a blue-green there. Through the Kenilworth corridor, through discussions with city staff, we identified some, again, the improvements that we would be looking to restore the Kenilworth corridor area. That does include restoration of the trail. The trail would have to be removed temporarily during construction of the project, but it would be replaced. And we're really looking to try to put it essentially back where it is today, but we'll refine that as we work with the city and that landscape architect on those pieces. It also includes the 21st Street Station. I have a separate slide for that. And intersection control at Cedar Lake Parkway where the trail crosses. And finally, there's a key interest in the safety, particularly the freight rail operations, and we were looking to provide a guardrail up through the areas you see in red, and just get an idea what that looks like. You can see the inset photo there. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the tunnel. There's been a lot of discussions of the tunnel since we unveiled that last year. We had, as everybody I think is aware, we did an independent water resources analysis. Burns and McDonnell was responsible for doing that. The city also, in conjunction with the park board, had hired a consultant, and the watershed district had also looked at, had a consultant look at this as well. And in terms of all those independent analysis, really no fatal flaws were identified with the construction and the operation of the shallow LRT tunnel. It was recommended out of the Burns-McDonnell report to design the tunnel for a 100-year storm event, which we are doing. And also wanted to point out to clarify that we're not really dewatering when we're looking at construction. We're essentially building this in cells, so we would kind of wall off the area where we're going to construct and take water out temporarily from those construction areas and then build the tunnel. So we aren't necessarily going to be dewatering the area as it would apply with that term. So I wanted to share some images of hopefully kind of depict what we're looking to accomplish here once we're in operation. The tunnel would be all built. This is where we are at a tunnel portal. There are tunnel portals at both ends, of course. You see the freight rail off to the left and the trail off to the right. So we anticipate there will be some moisture from rain and snow coming into the portal, so we need to deal with that. We have proposed to handle that through infiltration, and most of that water would go into these infiltration basins and filter down back into the groundwater. If there happens to be overflow, if there's a very strong storm event, we have provisions for an overflow to go out to respective the channel or to other stormwater pipes to collect that if that were to occur. As we look inside the tunnel, we'd like to state that a lot of concern about what happens to the groundwater, and basically we're looking to build this watertight. As operators of this project, ultimately we have a vested interest in keeping this in the dry. So we are looking at designs that will keep this in the dry, and we are also talking with other agencies that have experience with this type of construction to understand what kind of pluses and drawbacks they had, what worked well, what didn't. But that's not to say we won't have some moisture. We anticipate there may be some moisture where it may be coming in from the portals, maybe coming in from the trains. We do have provisions that we would look to handle that through to the sanitary sewer, as you see here. Wanted to include this image just to give some perspective of what this tunnel looks like within the cross section, if you will, of the area. So you see Cedar Lake off to the left. That's approximately 40 feet deep or so. As you see, the Kenilworth Trail and the Southwest LRT tunnel, those are pointed. They're a little bit difficult to see, and that's what I'm really trying to depict. The saturated sandy soil is probably at minimum maybe at least 250 feet down to bedrock. And our sheet piles, as we've described them in the past, would drive down maybe 40 to 45 feet below the ground surface. The tunnel itself would be in the range of about 30 feet below. And we're looking at a width of about 30, 35 feet, more in the 35-foot range, to just give you some perspective of how this tunnel fits in the geology here. So back to the improvements, we're now at 21st Street Station, where we are looking to do some improvements, as you see dashed there, to essentially on the sidewalk to make those more accessible. There's also looking to provide some linkage of the sidewalk network along Thomas over to the trail, and we'd also look to do some wayfinding signage as part of this project. Moving on to Penn Station, just looking at the base of this project, we have the station you see in blue-green there. There is a vertical circulation piece and a bridge that goes over to Penn and links into the roadway network from the station platform. That was already in the project. The newer elements that we've added are to enhance upon that sidewalk and the sidewalk areas as we move over to Thomas. You can see that there's a pedestrian bridge that crosses 394, essentially filling in that gap, if you will, of the missing sidewalks through that area. Likewise, as we move across 394 over Penn, on Penn Avenue. We would look to do some improvements along the sidewalks on both sides as we move up to Mountain View Avenue. We also anticipate to do some improvements up at Cedar Lake Road there. And then finally, I don't want to be remiss, there is an existing trail that comes from the North Cedar Lake Trail over to over to the Parkway. We would look to enhance that that trail segment. It's right today. It's a little dark. We look to do some lighting and some signage. As we move to Van White, here you can see the station platform in blue-green. As part of this project, we have vertical circulation up to the bridge to get down to the station platform. What is added here is that we would look to relocate the pedestrian bridge. There's an existing pedestrian bridge that goes up over the freight rail today. You can see the helicals on both ends going across, and we would look to remove that existing bridge and replace it with what you see in blue there with a new pedestrian bridge. We would have to work with the park board as well as the city to really look at the final alignment, but this is the general intention to get access over from the station area over to Bryn Mawr Meadows there. And as you see in the dashed areas, there'd be trail improvements, and as we get under 394, rather dark there today, we're looking to improve that with some lighting and do some improvements with lighting as we get over along Dunwoody there. Last station, Royalston Station. This is, you can see the station in blue-green there. The first piece is we would look to improve upon the what we're planning for the overhead catenary system. We have poles that are essentially H section, like you see on Hiawatha, were programmed through this area. Through our discussion with the city, we'll look at painted tubular, and also we'll look at doing embedded track through this segment. And we'd also look to enhance the pedestrian movements from the station area over to Farmers Market, either coming from the Royalston from the north or going to the Holden. We were looking to do improvements along this whole stretch, as you see in the dashed line work there. And there's an inset there with a photo showing what that OCS pole system would look like in the embedded track. A couple of items that are still within the station area. The first, I'll talk to the linkage at Van White Fremont. There's a gap of a couple blocks that does not have a trail there today. There are improvements south of that, south of 2nd, and improvements north of 4th. And this would look to essentially link that gap together. And the second piece is to look at enhanced bicycle connection along 7th, essentially from downtown at 2nd, going all the way up to Plymouth. So just a slide about submitting public comments. Comments will be accepted till 4:30, August 25th, via our project website. You see it's printed there. We also would take comments by U.S. mail and these other venues as you see here. So in terms of next steps on the municipal consent front, as I indicated, the Hennepin County Board did approve the Minneapolis segment of the plans, and so we are here tonight to have the public hearing, and then the next step would be to go to your full council for that action on the 29th. In terms of next steps and designs, I indicated we're not nearly done yet. We have a lot of work to do, and we'll be doing a lot of work with your staff as we proceed with the design. But the municipal consent just gives the city an opportunity to comment on those plans, and we have received those comments, and we've actually sat down with staff and gone through them. No real issues that we can't get through, and we will continue to do that as we evolve the plans. So we'll do another check set at 60, another check set, I should back that up, at 30%, at 60%, and 90%. Plus, we'll also have interim reviews as we move through the design. And this will culminate with an over-the-shoulder review of the final plans. And then final design work will take into consideration this process as well as environmental documentation. And these are essentially the elements of the project we would be working on with the city as we would proceed. So with that, I'll hand it over to Mr. Wiginius.
Mr. Chair, committee members, as we try to make the best of the situation, we have heard clearly from our citizens a strong desire to maintain the status quo that people along the corridor have experienced over the past 17 years as it relates to freight. What is the status quo? The status quo that people have experienced largely over the past 17 years is that freight trains are infrequent, relatively speaking, and carrying largely a mix of agricultural products. That's the status quo. As you know, nationwide, that's hard to maintain. We have an increasing amount of rail traffic carrying an increasing amount of oil and other non-agricultural products on a small and shrinking number of track miles. So our staff recommendation was to try to do what we could within the limits of federal law to maintain that status quo. It is important to note there are elements of the status quo that are not helpful to us that we cannot change through this agreement. We are painfully aware that the federal government grants a great deal of discretion to railroads. Here are two pieces of status quo we cannot change. TC&W could be bought by a bigger railroad running more frequent and more dangerous cargo. And the city, the county, and Met Council, none of us have the ability to stop that. TC&W could choose on its own to start running more frequent trains, although they with more dangerous cargo, which they say that they don't want to do. And again, the city is not in a position to be able to prevent that. However, public ownership and the existing trackage rights agreement do provide some benefits to the public which should be maintained. TC&W currently does not have the ability to, if you will, have its cake and eat it too, which is to not sell to a bigger railroad and yet also allow another company to operate on their tracks. They can't do that right now, and we want to maintain that prohibition on them having other railroads use their tracks. We also don't want to make TC&W a more likely prospect for acquisition by a bigger railroad. And public ownership, preserving public ownership, increases our chances that we'll be able to prevent TC&W from being purchased or prevent them from allowing other companies to use their tracks. If the land were to be sold to a private entity, public agencies would be needlessly responsible for increasing the chances that there would be more frequent trains and more dangerous cargo, and that was unacceptable to the city. So we brought that issue both to the Met Council and to Hennepin County, and we have achieved now 2 MOUs, one with Met Council and, as of today, one with Hennepin County, which preserve public ownership of the Kenilworth Corridor over the long term. We also have it written in those agreements that trackage rights goes with the ownership, and the trackage rights agreement is the one that prohibits other carriers from using those tracks. The Hennepin County agreement is on these same topics, was approved by the Hennepin County Board and Hennepin County Regional Rail Authority at their 1:30 meeting today. It is important to note, and we encourage people to go to their website, go to our website, and read that agreement. You'll see that the form is different because Hennepin County is the current owner of the land. Met Council is a prospective future owner of the land. We do not know who the ultimate owner of this corridor is going to be, but now that we have an agreement with both Hennepin County and Met Council, we feel assured that public ownership will be maintained. Obviously, we also want to maintain the pedestrian and bicycle trail in the Kenilworth Corridor, and that is reflected in both agreements, both the Met Council MOU and the Hennepin County MOU. The Met Council agreement also includes the city's preference that excess right-of-way meaning land not needed either for freight or LRT purposes, would be transferred to the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board after the completion of Southwest LRT in order that that land be used for as parkland and controlled by the Park Board. That piece is not in our Hennepin County agreement. There is a limit to what we can achieve on behalf of an agency, which is not us, and the Park Board and Hennepin County will need to have further conversation in order to make that transfer of excess land possible. But that is the city's position, and it is reflected in our agreement with the Met Council. Having spoken about the 2 freight MOUs, I'd just like to do one other thing, which is to answer the most obvious question about the difference between what was originally proposed by the Met Council and what is before you now. We have removed the north tunnel, but we are preserving the south tunnel. Why? Why remove the north shallow tunnel? There is no one single reason the city sought to remove the north tunnel, but we believe this package as a whole is a better resolution that balances the need to protect residents, parkland, and our city waters. It has been suggested in the past that the shallow tunnels are a gift to Minneapolis. We strongly disagree. Our skepticism of the shallow tunnels has only grown as we have become more familiar with the downsides of these tunnels. All of these downsides need to be measured against the upsides as well as the level of need for each tunnel. As we measure those trade-offs, our unanimous city staff recommendation is that the downsides of the north tunnel are not worth it. First, the tunnels are divisive in the community. The tunnels divide residents into winners and losers. If you live near the midpoint of a tunnel, you would likely experience less noise. If you live near a portal, you could likely experience more noise, more than if the tunnel wasn't there, due to sound bouncing off the retaining walls needed at tunnel portals. Furthermore, of course, the tunnels do nothing for the residents north and south of the tunnels, nor between the two tunnels at the channel between the lakes. The presence of two sets of portals at the channel may make the situation worse. Number two, construction impacts. It has also been said that the shallow tunnels are, quote, like the deep tunnel but cheaper. That is not the case. For example, shallow tunnels are built using an open pit construction method, which will require loud pile driving and the noise and dust of lots of truck traffic to remove lots of dirt. 3, plantable space. The space over the top of the tunnel cannot have trees on it because the roots would grow into the roof of the tunnel chamber. Number 4, visual blight. The shallow tunnels require the construction over 1,000 feet of lineal crash walls / retaining walls. These walls, if they had been built, would be at each of the 4 portals, cumulatively 1,000 feet, one at each end of each tunnel. Unlike the trains themselves, which are less frequent on evenings and weekends, the visual blight of these tunnels, these tall walls, 6-foot-high walls on 2-foot berms, would be present 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is particularly impactful from the channel northward, which is the more wild and natural segment of the corridor. Number 5, project certainty. The residents of this corridor have already experienced one promise, the promise that freight would be removed, going unfulfilled. The city does not want to set up residents for another disappointment. In effect, we are letting go of an amenity of questionable value, in favor of a greater degree of project certainty regarding freight ownership, the quality of landscape restoration, and the set of critical pedestrian and corridor improvements without which we believe residents would find the project substantially less accessible and less attractive. Having described the unanimous city staff position on shallow tunnels generally, you might ask, well, then why would we keep the south tunnel? There are major differences between the north and south shallow tunnels. First, narrowness. The south part of the corridor is much more narrow, so narrow that if the south tunnel were not built, the Kenilworth corridor ceases to exist. There are no comparable substitutes. That is why the design MOU ensures that the south tunnel will be built. Number 2, transportation. The south tunnel is necessary from a transportation perspective to maintain the second most well-used bike trail in the city. The Cedar Lake Trail is second only to the Midtown Greenway in terms of its usage. It will also help us avoid an at-grade crossing at Cedar Lake Parkway, which is important. Preservation of homes. The south tunnel mitigates the need to take the Cedar Lake townhomes, which would displace numerous residents. There is considerably more public land available north of the channel, and there are no takings up there that would need to be mitigated. Impact and cost to acquire townhomes would be significant. The DEIS stated that co-location alternative would require the acquisition of 57 parcels along Kenilworth Corridor Trail between West Lake Street and Cedar Lake Avenue, with the addition of 3 single-family homes. Not taking homes was a core comment in our 2012 DAS comments. Even if the trail were removed, as some have suggested, which the city would also find unacceptable, there would not have been enough space to run freight next to light rail without property takings in the narrowest sections. Impacts and mitigations. The extreme narrowness at the south end means there is no room for other forms of attractive visual mitigation, like trees. The walls of the portal on the south end are less intrusive in terms of visual impact because the setting is filled with structures and is less natural than the north end. Finally, stations. The south tunnel does not require the removal of any stations. The north tunnel, if we had accepted it, would have required the removal of the 21st Street station, which means those residents would experience all the downsides of the tunnel, but not actually be able to ride the train. I emphasize that the preservation of the 21st Street station is not the sole reason. By no means. It is only one of a series of reasons for the city staff recommendation before you. Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is now an appropriate time to ask some questions?
Certainly.
And I just, I think this question would be for Mr. Wagenius, and just because I've heard confusion out there, and I know that it is a question often asked, and in a situation like this, very useful to have accurately answered. And so I think it would be useful if Mr. Wagenius could review the roles that each of the agencies play in transit decisions, both transit operations and transit planning, meaning Hennepin County, the Met Council, and the city. What role do each of us have in transit planning and transit operations?
Mr. Wagenius, clarification?
Chair Reich, Mayor, all of the transit service in Minneapolis and St. Paul, as well as most suburban transit service, is owned and operated by Metro Transit, which is a part of the Metropolitan Council. Although local buses are sometimes referred to as city buses, they're not city buses. The city of Minneapolis does not own any buses nor any trains or tracks. We do not employ a single bus driver or LRT driver. That is all the Met Council. On the planning side, the Met Council is also in charge, but another entity, the County's Transit Improvement Board, also known as CTIB, also gets to decide on major capital investments, including Southwest LRT. The city does not have any votes on either CTIB or Met Council. The city is invited to send representatives to various advisory boards, for example, the Corridor Management Committee, or CMC. The city has one vote on the Corridor Management Committee. As we know, when it comes to the issue of rerouting freight, only the city delegate, Mayor Ryback last year and this year Mayor Hodges, was willing to reroute the freight by going to the Federal Surface Transportation Board. All of the representatives of the other agencies, including Met Council and Hennepin County, were unwilling to do that. The city's role beyond that is one largely of advocacy, both through those bodies where we sit on advisory boards and otherwise.
Any other questions per the presentation and the information provided? Councilmember Bender, followed by Councilmember Yang.
Thank you. I was wondering if we could get an update on the supplemental draft environmental impact statement of the shallow tunnel.
Oh, yes, Mr. Chair, Councilmember Bender. The supplemental draft environmental impact statement is currently under review with the FTA, the Federal Transit Administration. It's actually their document that we work in concert with them to get that produced. We currently have anticipated schedule to get that published in early 2015.
Would any information from that be available to folks who are worried about the quality of our lakes and the impact of the shallow tunnel on the lakes in our community? Since the FTA, sounds like the FTA has some information, would there be a possibility of releasing some technical information before the draft EIS is officially released?
Mr. Chair, Council Member, I would say that we actually, on the engineering side, we did a number of studies to take a look at that, and that a lot of that information is already out there on the website. We are looking to update our report based on the North Tunnel out and just the south end, that we'll be getting that together, and I think we could make that publicly available later this fall.
So you don't expect the information that's available now to be substantially different from what you've submitted to the FTA?
I would have to consult with my environmental team on that. I'm not necessarily part of the actual workings of that SDIS, so we provide input to it. I haven't necessarily reviewed that document myself, so I'd have to reserve comment on that.
Thank you. Councilmember Yang, followed by Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question related to what Councilmember Bender asked. With regards to that, shouldn't we have that information before we proceed with this process?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Councilmember Yang, that question has come up quite a bit, and we point to the statute that calls for the physical design components of the project, and it's really separate of the supplemental draft environmental impact statement, which is a federal and state process itself. As we understand, when the legislature put that statute into play, there wasn't really any intention on having a document like the SDIS being part of that municipal consent review. So they are separate, but roughly parallel processes.
Councilmember Gordon?
Yeah, I had a question about potential changes to in the future and what this municipal consent might mean. I particularly have concerns about the shallow tunnel, and if later it comes to some of the funders or the legislature, or if there's somebody that could say we can't really afford that shallow tunnel, we're going to take that out now, but everybody's already agreed on the alignment and everything else, so we're just going to go ahead and remove the bike trail. Is there would that, or can you tell me what kinds of other changes would trigger the requirement that we'd have to come back for municipal consent?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Councilmember Gordon. The statute does read that if there's a substantial change to that physical design work that we presented initially, that we would have to come back to that entity. So we would consider that if the alignment today were a shallow tunnel and it moved to at grade or a bridge or something different besides the tunnel, that we would have to come back to the city and the county to look to that municipal consent question again.
I think I can't speak for the entire city council, but I believe we would also consider that a substantial change, and so or it's on the public record right now that would definitely be a substantial change. And my understanding is then we'd have to come back and go through this whole process again.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Councilmember Gordon, on behalf of the Met Council, we would agree with that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or need for clarifications per the presentation? Oh, Madam Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I realized as we were going through the question about who has the decisions around transit and transit planning, that I also think there's been some question around land use and who has the opportunity to make land use decisions, which clearly the city does around the stations, but that might but sometimes that is mitigated by the decisions that are made with transit planning. And I was wondering if, I know that issue has come up with Southwest Light Rail, and I was, the land use planning issues. I was wondering if Mr. Wagenius could address that issue as well.
Thank you.
Chair Reich, Mayor, the situation with land use is different. The city does have a greater influence over land use through our zoning authority and the activities of our community planning and economic development department. We would like to see economic development, job growth, and urban revitalization near transit stations in the city of Minneapolis. And I don't say that specific to Southwest LRT, just broadly speaking. We can promote that at the city level, but the prospects for development are enhanced or limited by the inherent character of these station locations. This transit line isn't going to the intersection of Broadway and Penn. It isn't going to the intersection of Nicollet Lake. Those are the types of locations the city would most like to see served by rail transit. They're ripe for private sector investment. The stations along Southwest LRT in Minneapolis are remote and inaccessible compared with the stations that would exist at locations like that, or the stations that we're accustomed to along the Central Corridor or Hiawatha, which are easy to find and accessible from all directions. That is why the tentative agreement on Southwest LRT includes $30 million worth of these critical investments in pedestrian access. It's not going to make Southwest LRT like Central or Hiawatha, but it will make it better than it otherwise would have been in terms of pedestrian access, and it could make some difference with development. Despite these challenges, we will not give up. I think I speak for all our city staff in promoting economic development. Other than the 21st Street station, we do expect some level of development at each of the Minneapolis stations, but we will proceed with our eyes wide open. Except for Royalston Station downtown, which could develop very quickly, we do not expect development on the scale or speed of Central Corridor, which runs down a city street. The presence of active freight corridor will also inhibit development. The amount of developable land is also sharply limited at the other stations. We're going to be particularly focused on Van White moving forward, where there is some amount of land and where we feel the delta will be the largest between what exists now and what is possible. We're going to double down on that and get what we can.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gordon? Previous? Any other further questions or clarifications per the presentation? Seeing none, I will just make a clarification on my end that disruption of a regional bike trail would be a significant change from our perspective and my perspective as well, not just if a tunnel is gone or not. That's something that we think would be very significant and would hope that we get another chance to review if that were the case. So I just wanted to clarify that point. Seeing no further clarifications regarding the presentation, we have the information before us. Before I open the public hearing, I will state that this is an extension of the formal proceedings of the committee. We will follow with proper decorum and protocol that will reflect that formal nature of this forum. With that, I also would say just practically, we have respect for each other's viewpoints, otherwise we couldn't have a forum to hear your own. And so we will expect that sort of a consideration to everyone here. With that, I will open the hearing, noting that we do have, for those who are in the halls, we do have overflow in 319. Speakers will be limited to 2 minutes. Committee Vice Chair Palmisano will be enforcing that, as she did last time at our listening session. And we will be taking people in order. Everyone has a number. So when people go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, get ready to queue up if you happen to be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, etc. With that, with the ground rules stated, I will open the public hearing. We have the first speaker is John Hartwig. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record. And you have 2 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is John Hartwig. I live at 3228 Humboldt Avenue South. Under the doctrine of a lesser magistrate, this is a doctrine from the Reformation of 1500. We're going to protect our lakes from all enemies, both domestic and foreign. Last week we had an individual here by the name of Jonathan Tresh from Lowe's Hotels in New York. He was here supposedly to look at a new hotel at 601, the 601 Hotel. But that was a cover story. Really what it wants to do is your northwest or the Southwest Light Rail and the Green Line Rail are going to be in an a situation like this, with the noise and the dirt and the confusion there. What they're going to do, the people in Kenwood and the Kenilworth area are going to be driven out of that, out of their neighborhoods, and the people from New York, other places, are going to come in there as soon as those homes are sold and put up condos, co-ops, and anything else where they can make millions of dollars. We're going to protect our lakes regardless of what happens to any individual here in the city. Our lakes are sacred. Let's keep them that way. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. We have Speaker 2, Richard Adair, and then again, Speakers 3, 4, 5, and 6 are encouraged to queue up. Welcome.
My name is Richard Adair. I live at 200 Upton Avenue South in Bryn Mawr. And thank you to the council members for this opportunity to give you the perspective of one 71-year-old individual who's lived in Bryn Mawr for 25 years. Bryn Mawr, as you know, is a neighborhood that straddles north and south Minneapolis. I'm old enough to have been involved in the civil rights demonstrations in 1961. I saw the anger and the fear in people's eyes. I was working at a hospital in Cleveland, Ohio in 1968 when race riots broke out and our hospital received 23 gunshot victims in 1 hour, all of them policemen. I've also read the newspaper this morning about what's going on in Ferguson, Missouri. So all I want to say is that your votes, which I'm sure every single one of you will be making with your own conscience, will be viewed in a racial context, whether you like it or not, and whether this is related to what you're thinking or not. My friends and neighbors in the North Side are very eager to believe that the leaders of the city of Minneapolis understand what their lives are like and are willing to invest in their neighborhood. In this case, the investment means putting stations at Royalston, Van Wyck, and Penn, and importantly, having high-quality, frequent bus service between the North Side and those stations. I urge you to vote yes on municipal consent and to understand that when you do this, you'll be providing hope and you'll be providing a feeling of inclusiveness to the people who live in this part of our wonderful city. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next up, we have Mr. and Mrs. Moore. I can't quite read the writing, but number 3. Oh, Vicki.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm Vicki Moore. I'm a resident of the Harrison neighborhood. I participate in the Harrison Neighborhood Association and the Bassett Creek Redevelopment Oversight Committee.
And I'm Vida Ditter, and I'm on the same committee, the Bassett Creek Valley Redevelopment Oversight Committee, and I live in Bryn Mawr. And we've both been working on those plans for the last
20 years,
20 years, whatever.
I was very happy to hear that there's a commitment for the city stations, Penn, Van Wyck, and Royalston. To me, equity is a very important word, and from my point of view, one way to implement equity is through development. And so we do support the Southwest LRT, and we strongly support those 3 stations. We ask that the development staff from the city, the county, and the Met Council that focus on transit-oriented development work together to guarantee the full build-out of the Bassett Creek Valley Plan.
Yep, that plan's been approved by the City Council, and it was also approved by Met Council. So it's a plan that's ready to be moved forward as soon as we know that that station, the Van Wyck, is permanent. And the Penn Avenue station becomes important because those are the 2 north-south connectors to the stations. And so hopefully with those stations approved, we will get more transportation going into the north side. That's it.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Speaker 4, Mr. Bill McCarthy.
Good evening, Chair Wright, committee members, and Mayor. My name is Bill McCarthy. I'm president of the Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation, 312 Central Avenue Southeast. We represent 80,000 workers from all backgrounds: educators, government employees, nurses, public safety professionals, healthcare providers, hotel and restaurant workers, construction workers, and so many more. 22,000 of our members live in the city of Minneapolis. At the Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation, we believe that good jobs strengthen communities, and that our communities have the opportunity to work together to build an economy that works for all. An economy that works for all means that every worker can access a good job, no matter where workers live or where jobs are located. An economy that works for all means that every worker has an efficient way to get to work. A comprehensive transit system in the Twin Cities is essential to building an economy that works for all. With stations at Penn, Van Wyck, and Royalston, Southwest Light Rail will provide access for the residents of North Minneapolis to jobs in the southwest suburbs or downtown Minneapolis, or to educational and training opportunities at the University of Minnesota and Dunwoody Tech. And after Southwest, the Bottonville light rail line will connect Minneapolis northward to Brooklyn Park. A waitress who lives in the Cedar Riverside area can take a train to her job at the Mall of America. A nurse who lives in South Minneapolis can hop on the light rail line to her job in Hopkins. Someone who builds medical devices in Brooklyn Park can get to his home on the north side, all using the same connected transit system. Transit connects us all to work, and work connects us all to each other and to our communities. Labor has always been a strong voice for transit and transportation investment. One important reason is that roads, bridges, and light rail are built by people from our local communities who are paid a good living wage. Buses and light rail trains are driven by drivers who are paid a good living wage, and transit and roads are used by all of us
Mr. McCarthy,
to get to work
if you
and
could just
home
finish your thought.
and
Thanks.
recreation.
Thank you.
And I would so urge that everyone here support the light rail. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Russell Palma?
Hello. Russell Palma. I live at 3141 Dean Court, number 1004 in Minneapolis. My comments are in opposition to the proposal. Although I have emailed all of you many times on this subject, I feel compelled to take this final opportunity to point out at least a few of the obvious shortcomings of the Southwest LRT. Here's my short list. First, the alignment makes no sense. In the Kenilworth Corridor, ridership will be essentially zero, whereas along the Midtown Greenway, there are thousands of new apartments sprouting up filled with young professionals who would be eager to ride the light rail downtown. And to pretend the proposed alignment will create significant North Minneapolis ridership flies in the face of geography and logic. Secondly, the proposal is an environmental disaster for Minneapolis. The Met Council is asking for municipal support to cut down thousands of mature trees, dig shallow tunnels in the Chain of Lakes area, and build a relatively enormous, intrusive bridge over the channel connecting Cedar Lake and Lake of the Isles, without first submitting an environmental impact statement that evaluates the effects of these actions. How in the world is it possible for the City Council to make an informed, intelligent vote without this information? Third, the proposed shallow tunnels will pass less than 2 feet from the former grain silos on Dean Court, my home. Will there be sufficient mitigation funds to pay for the probable damage that will be done to these historic buildings? Will it be necessary to move residents during the construction process? What will be the lasting noise, vibration, safety, and environmental effects? Again, there are no answers because there's a lack of an up-to-date environmental impact statement. Of course, there are many other legitimate questions about cost, safety, promotion of sprawl, broken promises of moving freight rail, etc. But to sum up, to me, this project brings into question the very essence of Minneapolis as a green city that values its lakes and natural areas. These areas, once lost, are almost impossible to reclaim. It will be a sad day if the City Council votes to support the Southwest LRT
Thank you, Mr. Palmer.
as it is proposed.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you. Bob Carney Jr.?
Hi, I'm Bob, again, Carney Jr. Again is in quote marks. South Minneapolis, 42nd and Colfax. I videotaped on August 6th a train with 80 ethanol cars moving through Kenilworth. And I got the president of that company on the phone later that day and interviewed him. We have a dispute. He says he doesn't recall or didn't hear that I told him that I was tape recording it. You can judge for yourself because both the tape recording and the video are on YouTube. I've submitted a transcript of it, and I've submitted the YouTube link as public comment. So I think that's public record, and if a lawsuit proceeds against this for not having the environmental impact statement available before these votes are taken, I sure hope that will be included in the affidavits on the lawsuit. He said, the president of this railroad said, that it doesn't matter who owns the tracks, that there is a federal rule that requires a railroad to carry any chemicals that anybody wants to ship, including chlorine. That's used for poison gas in warfare. He said that his company has substantially increased their insurance. He estimated, when we were talking about a catastrophic event, he estimated the liability could be as high as $500 million. You're talking about a shallow tunnel with potentially 2 light rail trains in it. maybe as many as 1,000 people or more, and chemical trains moving over it. He said one of his major concerns was a trespasser. Does that mean terrorist? It is absolutely immoral to consider building this kind of a transit system with the potential accident that could happen there, and it's outrageous that you are proceeding without the environmental impact statement.
Thank you for your comment. Next up is Jack Sparrow.
I am Captain Jack Sparrow. I live at 3522 Bloomington Avenue South. I'm a candidate for Hennepin County Commissioner, District Number 4. I also viewed the videotape that Bob again Carney referenced. In it, Mr. Wagner maintains that the ethanol cars that he videotaped were empty. But does empty mean empty, or does it mean the gaseous fumes that would normally accumulate in these kind of tanks even after their liquid contents are offloaded? The kind of gas like gasoline and ethanol are actually more dangerous in their gaseous forms. That's what a carburetor is for. It mixes the gas with the oxygen of the atmosphere to make an explosive mixture that runs an engine. I'm also very concerned about the potential of carrying chlorine on these tracks. As Bob mentioned, chlorine was used in World War II. It was effective because it lighter than air. It goes down into the trenches. It would also go into tunnels, especially at the entrances of the tunnels and exits of the tunnels. So I think that we need to investigate those possibilities, look at that more carefully before we make a decision. I'm also concerned about the environmental impacts statement that hasn't been completed for this particular alignment. I think that we have to get that information before. We can't wait until 2015. We have to get that information before we go ahead with this. So all I want to say is I think we have to stop this $1 billion boondoggle and just investigate before we go forward. You can look at more information that I have on this at occupirate.blogspot.com. occupirate.blogspot.com. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll move on to Speaker 8, Sarah Brenner, and if you're Speaker 9, 10, etc., please queue up.
Thank you, Sarah Brenner, Minneapolis. You stood with us, strongly supported no co-location. Some of you were elected because of your strong stance on no co-location. Now at the 11th hour, you've abandoned that stance, abandoned us, and negotiated something with the Met Council that we are all trying to understand. Last spring, you voted to reject the tunnels because, in Mayor Hodges' words, I continue to be opposed to co-location with shallow tunnels. Asking Minneapolis to lose everything is something I will not say yes to. I will not, on behalf of my constituents, vote yes to lose on everything when there are other better alternatives that we could and should pursue. It's unfair to Minneapolis. In those negotiations, we're trying to figure out what you got. Poultry station improvements, arty poles, adding the 21st Street station in a neighborhood that has a hard time filling its buses. You abandoned the North Tunnel for $30 million and got only hazy guarantees that the land will remain under public control in an area that can't be developed anyway, and with a freight company who, through common carrier legislation, must carry whatever and however much their customers demand them to. You didn't even get the Met Council to sign the equity agreements requested by a broad coalition of organizations. So from our perspective, you either negotiated away everything from a point of weakness, were bullied, or worse, threatened by the Met Council with the loss of other projects. It's clear you're not telling the whole story. You won't say, but certainly you must have gotten something more to give all that away. To Councilwoman Goodman, it was you who should have been negotiating for us with the Met Council. It's your district, but you've allowed yourself to be publicly silenced. We have your back and will continue to support you if you continue to speak boldly for us, your constituents. Finally, if you vote for this...
Thank you, Ms. Brenner. Thank you for your comments.
Just one statement.
I'm sorry, I need to cut you off so that everybody has a chance. Thank you.
Thank you. Harry Selvage, or...
Chairman Wright, Madam Councilmember Bender, my council member, and the mayor. I know you both ran as transit proponents, and if this project fails, being because you don't have an EIS, if this project fails because you don't like the current alignment, if this project fails because you're afraid of the bikes, well, then you will have done what conservative, reactionary Republicans could only dream of. And this is you, a left liberal, who promise transit, promise development. We're a great city. Minneapolis is a great city and deserves a fast, world-class transit system. Could it be better? Yes, it could be better. But if we kill this now, we're going back to the blue table. We're going back, to the boondocks, and there's nothing. We won't have anything. Yes, we'll have maybe an orange line put in the future, but we won't have much, and we really need this project to be a people. The environmental concerns that many people are so concerned about, and the spending requirements that some people are so concerned about, where were they when we decided, again, to invade Iraq and all the countless environmental disaster and billions that are being done on that war? No one seems to care about that. But one little trail, it's taken us years of negotiation to get this far. It seems tragic in our modern society that we so quickly rush to war in a matter of days and spend billions of dollars, but one little choo-choo train that's going to serve all our community. We can barely even come together and do that. And that would be a tragic day in this city if this project fails. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving to presenter 10, and then followed by 11, 12, and 13. If you can kindly queue up. Name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Avi Vishwanathan. I am the Hire Minnesota campaign director. We are at 2525 East Franklin. Hire Minnesota as part of the Equity Commitments Coalition for Southwest Light Rail, which is a coalition of community organizations, advocacy groups, and activists that are calling on the Minneapolis City Council to take action and respond to a list of solutions that we have provided to resolve inequities in the transit system. We would like to thank first Council members Glidden and Reich for having met with this coalition to begin a dialogue on equity principles. That's a significant step. That's also a step that the Met Council has taken by responding in writing to those requests and to begin sitting down with us to have serious conversations on how we can move forward. And we heard an earlier speaker referencing your inability to get the Met Council to respond. That's not your job. That was our job, and we were able to do that. It is your job to respond to us now and to begin that dialogue directly with us as community organizations that are working to solve these inequities. It's time for Minneapolis to step up and to actually begin that dialogue and move forward. We know that we have equity champions here up in the dais and in this city, but it's time to actually put that firmly and make those commitments. Now, this is about equity, which means justice. My son, he's 5 years old, and he's starting to learn about social justice. He sees someone standing on the corner asking for money. He knows that that person, he wants to give that person money. We drive by that corner, the same corner the next day, he sees a different person. We go somewhere else, he sees a different person. Through his observation, he's starting to see that this is a system, and there are systemic issues. You own part of that system. You are part of that. You control part of that. You have a role. Your role now is to respond to what we have provided as solutions to these systemic issues and to start creating equity in our transit system. Thank you.
Thank you. Presenter 11, Mel Reeves, followed by 12, 13, and 14.
Mel Reeves is my name. 1041 James Avenue North. And I honestly don't have anything new to say. I've probably said to a few of you guys up close and personal. But I want to just say that, this should be a common sense thing. I was talking about his kid, and I reminded how young people see things. They see things in black and white. They recognize if something's right, it ought to be done. So my thing is, if the train's going to be built, I don't have any argument with the people who are opposed to the train and something. But I know better than them. I know that once the power structure decides they want to do something, it's pretty much going to get done. So from that perspective, I say that if the train's definitely coming, let's make sure that everybody can get on board. And what I mean by that is that everybody should get their fair share. And we've said this over and over. but it shouldn't take us adults that long to figure it out. Avi's right. We're going to need you guys to put something in writing, whatever that means. Put the things in writing, like you did with the stadium when we asked that you all would make sure that people of color are included in the construction of the stadium. I think there was a staff directive or something like that was put out. So we need you to put something in writing. The Met Council did it already. They actually went through all the things that we outlined, which, of course, some things aren't in your jurisdiction, but some things are. So we want you all to take it seriously. We've been talking about equity. I mean, I think you can't come to Minneapolis without hearing the word equity. So it's time that we actually make sure that it becomes real. And this is an opportunity for us to really make it real, because we failed in some other places already, unfortunately. All you got to do is look around Minneapolis and look at the color of the folks doing most of the construction work, and you can see we're failing miserably in some areas of equity. But that's another discussion. Yeah, I'm going to stop right on time, sister. I guarantee you. So, because I'm just a broken record, the same old song, do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Presenter 12, Mr. Hussein Ahmed, followed by 13, 14, and 15.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Hodges and Honorable Council members. My name is Hussein Ahmed. I'm the director of West Bank Community Coalition. It's the neighborhood organization in the Cedar Riverside West Bank area. I'm here today in support of the Southwest LRT. And there's a couple of things I wanted to point out before I run out of time. One, because this is not only of equity, but also of opportunity. Transit-oriented development opens doors to the people who are able to get to jobs in many areas in this great nation this great state of ours. And having lived in Eden Prairie, there are a lot of organizations that do medical, like Alina and Fairview, Soft Touch, who does recording. I know a lot of people in our neighborhood who go to those jobs driving. Some of them would like to go apply those jobs, but they can't because of transportation. There are also other businesses that are there. So this opens doors to folks in the Cedar Riverside who are one of the, in that area is one of the areas that have the lowest income. And you have an opportunity to help areas like that to uplift by creating opportunities for them to reach the areas they can reach to get jobs done. One, as for my colleagues who talked about the environment, I'm a strong environmentalist and I'm a veterinarian by training. And I can tell you this, by driving, many people, as we know, Americans, we love our cars. By driving, we do more damage to the environment than cutting a few trees and having the light rail put in there. And we can also, by intelligence and design of the pollution control by the rail, we can have a conscientious plan that we can control the pollution. A study done by the American Forest and other organizations have noted that by 12,000 miles per year, a single car can emit 8,320 pounds of CO2 in the air per year. If just 100 people started taking it, that would be like 83,000 pounds of CO2. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaker Neil Tremblay is Speaker 13, 14, 15, 16. Please queue up. Name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name is Neil Tremblay. I live at 37 Oliver Avenue South in Minneapolis, and I am here on behalf of the Cedar Lake Park Association. Part of our mission statement of the Cedar Lake Park Association is to protect Cedar Lake and the land and trails surrounding it, protect and preserve. On a personal note, I like to bicycle, and I would like to encourage the committee members, the mayor, and the staff to go out and bicycle the Kenilworth corridor, because it is lovely right now. And when you do, remember what it's like. Work to return the corridor to that park-like setting. I think we all know there's going to be disruption, but if we can take a look at what it's like now and see what we can do to return it to its park-like setting, I think that would be wonderful. Another point I'd like to make is about the freight rail. Freight rail should never have been tied to this project. It is an entirely separate issue, and I think we can continue to work towards relocating the freight. Getting the freight rail out of that corridor, I think, should be a priority. And Lastly, I'd like to talk about the Cedar Lake Regional Trail and where it intersects with the Southwest LRT. The safety and accessibility of the riders of that trail, I think, should be paramount. We don't hear a whole lot about what's going to happen, how that trail, which is a city trail, which the city owns, and I think the Park Board maintains, but how that trail is going to be safely accessed over the trail, over the LRT. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 14. And then if 15, 16, 17 can be ready to queue. Name and record.
Hello, David Rubeck, I live in Minneapolis on Drew Avenue. It seems like this process is a foregone conclusion now, so I just wanted to express my frustration and that of many of my friends and family. This proposed train service is not good enough to justify the sacrifices and expense. A train that truly would serve Minneapolis would move through densely populated areas of the city that are filled with residents who depend on public transportation to get quality jobs. That alignment was not chosen. A train worthy of Minneapolis would intrinsically improve equity. North Minneapolis is poorly served by this train. The train barely touches the southern edge. People have to take buses to get to it. Instead, there could be an express bus service directly to Eden Prairie. There's one in the other direction. This process has been a snowballing mass of bad decisions, missed opportunities, and wasted money. It has resulted in the wrong alignment for your city's people. This alignment makes it difficult to access their needed transportation. It's potentially dangerous to train riders and residents near the co-location, and it destroys parkland for which the city is internationally famous. The process got you elected. The process brings us here, and the process will allow you to make it right. So do not hide behind the excuse that someone else's failed process put us in this place. Do not let the Met Council, an unelected, unaccountable body of policymakers and outside interests, tell you what to do with your city. Madam Mayor, you were painting a picture earlier of powerlessness regarding transit planning. If you're unhappy with this alignment and unhappy with co-location, why give municipal consent? It sounds like this is your only card to play. Your job is to preserve what is great about Minneapolis, to intelligently plan for the future of the city and to serve its constituents, which are the citizens. Your constituents are not members of the Metropolitan Council, developers, trade unions, or residents of outside communities. We are your constituents. You must be courageous and not give municipal consent. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 15, Angela Eldrick.
Hello, my name is Dr. Angela Erdrich. I'm a pediatrician. I've worked in the public health care setting as a pediatrician for the Indian Health Service for the past 17 years. I'm here to speak my piece about Southwest LRT. The City Council is under a lot of pressure to view Southwest LRT as an equity opportunity. However, this tunnel plan disrespects the one public entity in Minneapolis that has successfully delivered equity to its citizens, namely the Minneapolis Park Board. Every day at work in my clinic, as part of my job, I ask kids what they do for exercise, and I hear really incredibly heartwarming stories about kids who go swimming in the lakes, they're biking with their grandparents, they're fishing, they're using the Minneapolis park system. And the Minneapolis Park Board has gotten equity right, so we should listen to them on Southwest LRT. I want to talk a little bit about the public health aspects of these potential for train crashes. When I was in medical school, I learned not to talk about motor vehicle crashes as accidents because on a population basis, there's things that can be done to prevent them. There are turning points in history where we had less motor vehicle deaths because things like airbags were installed. This could be a turning point for preventing a train crash and a chemical disaster in the Kenilworth corridor, the pinch point. My question to the Minneapolis City Council is, are you sure you are on the right side of history today? Consider this situation. The proposed Southwest LRT shallow tunnel plan allows freight trains, some of which carry ethanol, to travel through a pinch point between two spring-fed lakes alongside a bike and pedestrian trail, stacked vertically on top of a light rail train through a tunnel built 45 feet deep into the ground, water between Calhoun and Cedar Lakes, dug 1.5 feet from the foundation of 2 large condominium complexes. I'm not an engineer. I don't think any of you are, but it seems that we should wait and that we are compounding our risk for serious chemical disaster with this plan. Sometimes the most responsible practice in a complex case is to seek a consult from a specialist, and that's what
Thank you,
the
Dr.
environmental
Riddick.
impact statement is about.
Thank you. Speaker Asim Shabazz, please come in, name and address for the record.
Good evening, council members, Madam Mayor. My name is Asim Shabazz, president of Mass Junior at 1729 Lindale in North Minneapolis. And first, I want to express my support and our community support for the Southwest LRT. We also want to include, though, and I want to state that the Equity Commitments Coalition that we have put forward to you all, Met Council, and Hennepin County in writing for a response. We believe that that response will constitute accountability. It also allows for other constituents here who are wondering about your response as a city, which is governing what your position actually is. I've heard a lot about environmental impact from a sustainable ecosystem. I want to say, as a resident who lives and works with a small business in North Minneapolis, that I bike, I hike, I kayak. All of us in Minneapolis are not destitute. We do need investments like other parts of the city to continue to grow and to add to our landscape. We are self-sufficient when the provisions have been allotted to us to manage and to grow. And we need to focus on that as a whole city. Yes, we have beautiful parks and lakes, some of which I'm actually allergic to for all the trees, but nonetheless, I get out there. And I think that as we grow our community and our rights for economic development, we've asked that the city helps with a fund to invest and to help stabilize the growth of North Minneapolis so they can continue to grow. But transit also has been a tool to segregate cities. It also has been a tool to divest in certain parts of the city. Southwest represents an opportunity to build a connection. No, it doesn't touch certain points that we would like for it to touch, but the BRT represents an opportunity for a connection that can get people from my community to other opportunities in the Southwest area. With that said, again, I want to express our support, build and continue to build a system that will support growth of Minneapolis. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Moving along, Speaker 17, and if 18, 19, and 20 could be prepared.
Hello, my name is Louise Erdrich, and I want to thank you all for the work you've done and for all that's gone before. I know this is a long and exhaustive process. I am a small business owner on 21st Street. I'm sort of an anachronism because I have a small bookstore. And we're all here, I think, because we have really good reasons. Pro and con. I happen to think I would financially benefit. Our bookstore would probably get a few more customers, but I think that the city would really, something enormous would be lost. And here's why I think that. When I'm in my bookstore and I'm talking to people who visit our city, the thing I hear over and over is, you people don't know what you have. You just don't know what you have. You have green, you have tranquility, you have an extraordinary place to live. And it astonishes people who come to visit us that we care so much about our city and we care so much about our green spaces. That's why I don't think we should move forward at all without an environmental impact statement. I think this project is the victim of something called forward inertia, where you just start making decisions. Everybody's afraid to go back. But the original proposals for this line would give true equity to this city and would really change the profile of our transit system in a way that benefits more people and leaves our green space as gorgeous, varied, and attractive to money spending strangers as it is now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving to Speaker 18, Amity Foster, And then if 19, 20, and 21 would be prepared to queue up. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi. My name is Anna T. Foster. I live at 1605 2nd Street Northeast in Minneapolis. I'm pro-light rail. More importantly than any of that, I'm a bus rider and I am a member of NOC, Neighborhoods Organizing for Change. Transit is a good investment. Too many transportation investments have been used to divide us and destroy our communities. This one can actually be different. I ride the bus every day, St. Paul, Minneapolis, North Minneapolis, South Minneapolis. North Minneapolis is the hardest to get to. It is the most underserved by transit resources too. Bus shelters are not lit. They may not even be at that stop. This is wrong. As a rider, I want the Minneapolis City Council to do everything within your power to ensure that the Metropolitan Council uses this $1.6 billion investment to promote transit equity. We're calling for two things. The Met Council needs to move from a commitment of filling 74% of the RCAP, racially concentrated areas of poverty bus shelters, move that to 100% commitment. Even more importantly, the Met Council needs to commit to filling the transit gap by connecting north-south bus lines to the Southwest Light Rail. We have a map, and that area is right down here. These are responsible, these are reasonable and concrete demands, and we need your leadership to build a Southwest Light Rail that will build a truly equitable One Minneapolis. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 19, name and address for the record.
My name is Georgiana Ludke, and the address is 2805 Chowan Avenue South. First, I want to thank City Council members for your service to Minneapolis and to its citizens. We really do count on you. But I have to say the planned Southwest LRT does not serve Minneapolis. For many years, the city's been on the losing end of negotiations about this route. By denying municipal consent, you can change that. We all know this about the Southwest LRT. It desecrates urban green space and would be environmentally damaging. It jeopardizes the safety of its residents with freight and LRT in the same corridor. It avoids communities which need it the most. And then there is the cost, $1.6 billion. It's difficult for many of us to fathom that kind of price tag, but here are a few comparisons that provide some perspective. $1.6 billion is 20 times the annual construction budget of all 400 parks in the National Park Service system. It's 70% more than President Obama's budget to help all 50 states prepare for climate change. It exceeds, according to World Bank statistics, the last reported U.S. foreign aid to Iraq. And what do we get for this staggering price tag? According to the Met Council, what we would get is a mere 4,000 cars off the road, and that only by the year 2030. And it would provide a train service to Eden Prairie commuters who already have access to excellent and faster bus service. Southwest LRT looks like a project created to successfully get federal monies and transit bragging rights. Surely we can put this vast amount of money to better use. If you grant municipal consent, your legacy will be forever tied to the largest priced public works project in Minnesota history, but one that doesn't serve the people of Minneapolis. Can you really say
Thank you, Ms.
it's worth
Ludke.
it?
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. And moving to the Speaker 20, name and address for the record. And if everyone else could queue up, 21 through 25.
Patty Schmitz, 2806 Dean Parkway. Thank you to the members of the City Council. The Southwest LRT line, as it was designed to serve suburban riders, not designed to serve urban riders. It's no surprise that it doesn't serve urban riders particularly well, and certainly not the transit-dependent ones. There is a critical flaw from the start with respect to the freight reroute, which we know, a condition that was known or could have been known for 5 to 10 years at least. As a side note, the City of Eden Prairie, after threatening to pull out of the project in 2009, instead added a whopping $300 million, which was 30% of the project, to that price tag by negotiating for an alignment to save their green space. This route barely touches North Minneapolis, as has been acknowledged. 7% of the ridership is from there, as predicted by the Met Council, less than 1,000 riders per day. If you listen to what some of the equity groups are saying, they acknowledge it's not that great of a route, but understandably, they want to get something out of this. They are lobbying to have things like bus shelters built as a condition for the route, but shouldn't we already have bus routes for people that are taking the bus? Should not be tied to the Southwest LRT. The alignment is a quadruple whammy in the Kenilworth corridor: safety concerns related to co-location, lack of redevelopment, low population, and destruction of green space. The hastily conceived tunnels haven't been studied, as we've discussed. If you really care about Minneapolis as our elected officials, you should demand that projects like this are properly studied before being approved. They should serve transit-dependent groups. Please don't let this be your legacy. For $1.6 billion, we can do better.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving down the line, we have Speaker 22. Name and address for the record.
I am Mary Paddock. I live at 2782 Dean Parkway. The City of Minneapolis has consistently said no to the co-location of freight and LRT through the Kenilworth corridor for good reasons. It poses serious environmental threat to the chain of lakes. It avoids providing transit service to urban residents, especially those who need it the most. It promotes urban sprawl. It introduces the real potential for catastrophic train accidents. But recently, we saw Minneapolis crumble in negotiations with the Met Council, an organization in which the majority are hostile to the city of Minneapolis, an organization that is notorious for breaking its promises so consistently that I predict it will ultimately deem the tunnel unfeasible and will therefore co-locate at grade, build a Berlin Wall-style bridge over Cedar Lake Parkway, and condemn and raze 57 homes. And there's a reason they haven't signed the equity agreements. The Met Council is accountable to no one. It's unelected, and even our governor seems unable to rein it in. It's an open secret in the community, not reported in the news, that the Met Council has threatened to deny funds for other Minneapolis projects if you don't say yes to Southwest LRT. We know this because people involved have told us so. This is a corrupt way to conduct the people's business. We call on you, our elected public servants, to stand up to these bullies and put a stop to it. If you allow the Met Council, and to that I will add Hennepin County, to tread roughshod over Minneapolis now, you will have set a political precedent that will lead inexorably to the turning of our beautiful city of lakes into a mere suburban utility, and to finding yourselves impotent, a city government in name only. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Speaker 22, Tennille Boxley, and then 23, 24, 25, be prepared.
Hello, my name is Tennille Boxley, and I live at 1835 Bryant Avenue North, and I am a student at Summit Academy, OIC. I definitely support the Southwest Midwest Light Rail being built because it will benefit me and my family. I say that because I'm tired of being limited to low-paying jobs or minimum wage jobs or no jobs just because I can't reach a job that I'm qualified for just because there's no transportation. And I say I want to be able to, it will benefit me and my family. I will become more self-sufficient. I won't have to rely on government assistance. And I will be able to provide a better future for my children, for me and my children. So I strongly support the light rail being built. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Moving down to Speaker 23, Margaret Kirkpatrick.
Hi, Margaret Kirkpatrick, and I live at 2636 17th Avenue South in East Phillips. And I just basically like to echo the previous speaker. I think that the Southwest LRT will serve the low-income people in this neighborhood. In my neighborhood in South Minneapolis, we have good bus connections to downtown. I don't think we'll have any trouble getting to the Target Field. Anybody in my neighborhood would have trouble getting to Target Field to catch the LRT. But we need a way to get out. My neighbors need a way, I'm retired, to get out there. And so that's why I support this thing, basically. I'm also living over near the Hiawatha line. I know that the bus company, Metro Transit, has done a really good job of making sure that the buses can get people to the Hiawatha line. So, and they've worked with the bus schedules, the bus lines, and they've worked with the Hiawatha line schedule to make sure that they serve people who are trying to get to jobs out at the airport or out at the Mall of America. And I'm sure that Met Transit will do the same once this is built, that those stations in North Minneapolis will serve the people of North Minneapolis in getting to those jobs out in the Southwest. So that's why I support this. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Speaker 24. Stuart.
Hi, my name is Stuart Chazen. I'm here on behalf of Kenilworth Preservation Group and Lakes and Parks Alliance of Minneapolis. As most of you know, Tom Johnson of Gray Plant Moody, along with Lou Remley of Bassford Remley, represents Lakes and Parks Alliance of Minneapolis. On our behalf, they have sent a letter to Mayor Hodges and to Council President Johnson informing them that the municipal consent process for the Southwest LRT does not comply with state law, as Jim Alexander says. We have been led down a path of bait and switch for years with Hennepin County and the Met Council. There's absolutely no reason for the city of Minneapolis to trust either body at this point in time. We all know that the ultimate scenario here is what we feared from the beginning and originally voted down, which was no co-location in the Kenilworth corridor. Any way you slice it, the proposed plan is just that. If this plan is approved before all the needed studies have been completed, you have literally allowed the train to leave the station, and there will be no turning back. We all know you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Further, in regards to the public ownership of Kenilworth Corridor, the joint announcement by the City of Minneapolis and the Met Council states, the Met Council is to work closely with the City of Minneapolis and Hennepin County Regional Railroad Authority to ensure the corridor stays in public ownership. That's not true. It's not a legal document. Without a legal document, they can do whatever they want. And with 28 seconds left, I just want to state that the current process is legally defective and morally offensive. Moving forward would be a miscarriage of justice, and we urge you to vote no on behalf of this great city and the citizens who entrust you, our elected officials, to be stewards to this land. I think this quote from the great novelist, environmentalist Wendell Berry says it best. Whether we and our politicians know it or not, nature's party to all our deals and decisions, and she has more votes, a longer memory, and a sterner sense of justice than we do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Speaker Kenya McKnight. And if speakers 26, 27, 28 will be prepared to speak in turn.
Thank you. Good evening, council members and Mr. Chair and Mayor Hodges. I live at 1506 Thomas Avenue North. I am here as a committee member of the Coalition, Equity Commitments Coalition for the Southwest Light Rail Transit. I want to start off by saying thank you. You did a wonderful job with the presentation and laying out the facts. And also thank you, Mayor Hodges, for your leadership. We're glad we elected you as our mayor. And I want to say that I am really grateful that we have a process that considers the lives of people and our environmental components that sustain us. And while I am going to speak about St. Paul and your Minneapolis, I certainly wish the community of Rondo and St. Paul would have had that same option before Highway 94 went straight through the African American community, detouring not only any sort of a public infrastructure we had, but actual lives of people, families, culture, and history that cannot and will not be repaired. So we've had the transition to move our life forward, and I suspect we don't want to redevelop Highway 94 and detour folks so that we can have our community back. Yet it was a great investment for the future of building our state highway system. And so I encourage you to not only respond to the equity commitments that our coalition put together, which, by the way, we do not see as the total solution to every problem or challenge or opportunity for communities of colors in the city of Minneapolis, but it is a starting place for us to begin a process of thinking through how we're going to either grow a population of opportunity and prosperity or disparities. And that is the reality of what we're facing. We do know that people of color by 2042 will dominate the metropolitan region, right? In Minnesota, across this nation. So essentially, part of our job is to make sure that we build an infrastructure that creates the access and connectivity to opportunities throughout our entire region. You have a job. You are a city, but you're also a regional player. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving down to Speaker 26, Russ Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the council, and Mayor Hodges. I'm Russ Adams. I'm with the Alliance for Metropolitan Stability. We're a member of the Equity Commitments Coalition. I want to thank Councilmember Glidden and Reich and Peter Wagenius, the mayor's aide, for meeting with the Equity Commitments Coalition to have some preliminary discussions about how to move equity strategies through this project, leverage it to create better economic outcomes. We are looking forward to a written response from the city as we've gotten from the Met Council. We're expecting one from Hennepin County shortly. We can move forward as one unit when we have that. But I will say that we think this project is worth your vote for a vote yes, particularly if you believe in growing the population of Minneapolis and if you believe in building vibrant, thriving local economies. And if you believe in closing the equity gap and helping individuals who are in low wealth communities and communities of color reach their full potential, both economically and educationally, we know that you had the weaker hand in the negotiations at that table. And I don't think you guys crumbled. I think you negotiated from as strong a position as you could. I think you got some good outcomes. There'll be speakers later on that are going to thank you for making sure the 21st Street Station is going to be preserved, and $30 million to create better bike and pedestrian connections. One other good outcome that will come out of this project is if we hit the 32% construction goal for workers of color, for folks like the woman from Summit Academy, $105 million will move into households of color at the end of that project. If the Met Council agrees to our stretch goal of 40%, it'll be more than that. Equity is about putting money in people's pockets and helping them thrive. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Speaker 27, and if 28, 29, 30 can be prepared to queue.
I'm Constance Bonnewell from 2912 30th Avenue South. When I point out that if Botno was built a 100% BRT system, there would be enough money to build Southwest LRT, staying completely out of the Kenilworth corridor, I do so believing that Botno would be getting the better of the deal. BRT has advantages. It's easier and faster to install. It's easier to get equity with a BRT system. There would be more money available, about $500 million, for decent bus shelters and other transit resources. Summit Academy could train people to install BRT infrastructure. With Southwest, it's another less damaging alternative to LRT in Kenilworth. Given that the current Southwest BRT system is twice as fast as the proposed LRT, I don't understand why the Met Council in Hennepin County isn't enhancing the current Southwest BRT system rather than installing LRT. When North Star's line broke down in June, the MTC didn't have enough BRT buses to serve the people that got stranded. Hennepin County and the Met Council could be stocking up on buses that could be used the next day here. Remember Mayor Rybeck's vote no on LRT? It was a very appreciated vote, but he only did it when it was an easy vote, when he was at the very end of his term and Met Council in Hennepin County could no longer exact payback, threatening Minneapolis funding. Rather than use city employees being involved in confidential negotiations with the Met Council in Hennepin County, perhaps further meetings could be broadcast on cable. If you believe this LRT is bad public policy driven by the desire for federal funds, that this project is poorly planned and it's a threat to irreplaceable natural resources. Be brave.
Thank you,
And
Ms.
vote
Bonneville.
no.
Thank you, Ms.
If
Bonneville.
you stand up against bullies, we'll back you up.
Thank you very much. Speaker 28, Eleanor Westerly, and followed by Speaker 29, Todd Klingel. Everyone else prepare to queue.
Greetings, Honorable Chair Reich, City Council members, Mayor Hodges. My name is Eleanor Westerly. I live at 2012 Grand Avenue. It's a recent move. I'm now in Councilmember Bender's ward. And I come before you as a Minneapolitan of over 15 years, as a current bicycle commuter who uses the Cedar Lake Kenilworth Trail about once a week, and as someone who would not have been able to achieve my educational goals, my career, or my participation in the democratic process without a reliable transit system. But every day of my 15 years here, I've really yearned for a more effective system for this city, for my city. And the Southwest LRT is absolutely a crucial, necessary spoke in that build out, and I support it. The agenda to end the Southwest LRT project completely is short-sighted, it's myopic, and it's quite selfish. But what I find altogether really disgusting is the entitlement of those interests to speak to the racial equity implications of this project for communities that those folks don't have anything to do with. They look to dismiss and marginalize the real racial equity infrastructure that this project can represent. And I really urge you to dismiss these comments out of hand. The folks that I trust to tell me about whether this project is going to have an impact on racial equity in the Twin Cities are the folks who are going to be most impacted. The folks who I trust to tell me whether this train is going to have a positive impact on the lives of North Minneapolis residents are North Minneapolis residents. The folks that I trust to tell me whether this project is going to have a positive impact on communities of color are folks from communities of color. And so according to the folks that I trust, and according to what I know is right, completing this project with the requested equity commitments would be a massive structural step forward for racial equity in this city, which is something that many of you on this bench, and of course Mayor Hodges, have.
Thank you, Ms. Westerly.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Mr. Klingel, and then followed by Speaker 30, Eric Eklund.
Good evening, Chairman Reich, Mayor Hodges, members of the committee. I'm Todd Klingel. I'm the president of the Minneapolis Regional Chamber of Commerce, 81 South 9th Street in downtown Minneapolis. I'm here to say thank you. I serve on the Minneapolis Workforce Committee. I have for the past 6 years. Our entire mission is to get jobs for Minneapolitans, and often for Minneapolitans that have trouble finding those jobs. At the Chamber, we did a study this spring, which we were able to share with many of you, about jobs and how many more jobs there would be access to when Southwest is in place for people across Minneapolis, but particularly for those on the north side. And you may recall it's an astounding number. This is important from that perspective. All the Chamber ever wants to do is grow jobs. If you look at our transit system, 2/3 of the people on transit now are going to work or going to education so they can be better for work. When you put Southwest in place, you're continuing a system that this region will rely on to grow and prosper in the years ahead, many years. Met Council tells us there'll be 800,000 more people here in 2040. How are we supposed to handle all that without a responsible system beyond cars to get people to and from? And I've heard it said, oh, we don't want those people coming in from Eden Prairie or coming, my gosh, they're going to be in our restaurants, they're going to put tax dollars into our pocket. Heavens, who needs those dollars? How about the people that move into downtown, into North Loop or otherwise, and then commute out to United Health Group or to Cub Foods or into the Opus Triangle, raising the property tax base of Minneapolis and bringing more good Minneapolitans here and using that train as the opportunity to do so. So I know this was difficult. I want to thank both Councilmember Reich and Councilmember Glidden on the mediation. I really appreciate that you worked to make those stations as accessible as possible for Minneapolitans. The Met Council, frankly, didn't do so, and I'm glad you did. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klingel.
Thank you for your testimony. Speaker 30.
Minneapolis City Council and Mayor Hodges. I'm a resident of Bloomington, West Bloomington. I take the Kenilworth Trail and Cedar Lake Trail a few times per week. And
Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you state your name and address for the record?
Oh, sorry. Eric Eklund, 10519 Vesey Road, Bloomington.
Thank you.
I've followed this project for a couple of years, and I just think that it should go through Uptown instead of through a forest and gravel pits next to an active freight rail corridor. I've taken the 12, 17, and 21 bus quite a few times. They're full. They're slow, especially the 21 bus. I took it from Uptown to St. Paul and back, and it took 4 hours round trip, and never did that again. It would be nice if the Uptown area got the Metro Green Line instead and bus rapid transit, but I also think that north of Minneapolis deserves light rail, bus rapid transit, and just transit improvements in general. And I urge the city of Minneapolis to reject consent to this project and demand that it go through Uptown instead, and preferably go underground between Uptown and downtown instead of along Hennepin or Lindale, just because of what we've learned from the Metro Green Line between Minneapolis and St. Paul and how slow that is. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll move to Speaker 31, Julie Sabo, and 32, 33, 34, et cetera. Please queue up.
Thank
Name
you.
and
Thank you,
for the
council
record.
members and Madam Mayor. Julie Sabo, 2560 Upton Avenue South. Equity, or the lack of it, impacts all communities, not just one. And we are all responsible for advocating for public policy that is just and challenges the very patterns that entrench inequity. This train line does not serve the general welfare of our city and secures existing patterns of inequity. Projects that appease interests but do not challenge existing patterns are not the solution to inequity. Eden Prairie will get the highest ridership on this train line by ensuring it served their population. They also ensured the southwest suburbs would continue to enjoy high-end commuter buses with sheltered hubs that will serve the very same population as this commuter train. Urban residents will get the lowest ridership, by far, from this train, running through our parkland and only skirting neighborhoods. Our residents continue asking, begging for basic bus service and shelters. Where is the equity? Not in 150 new bus shelters MTC is ordered for the city. If the only way Minneapolis can get the Met Council to fund bus shelters is to desecrate parks, trails, urban neighborhoods, avoid urban density, both north and south, diminish the relevance of environmental studies, and support a transit system that was developed for choice suburban riders and to foster suburban and exurban development, jobs, not in the city, out there.
Thank you, Ms. Sabo, for your comments.
Yes, thank you. Moving to Speaker 32, Kathy Law.
Kathy Lowe, 2001 Franklin Avenue. When I gave some data at your last hearing about low ridership at the Minneapolis stations, I mentioned that a project engineer had earlier that evening called the Minneapolis station locations challenging. And I just want to reiterate that tonight Peter Wagenius called them remote and inaccessible. Although I'm normally a data person, today I want to urge you to vote the way I suspect you really feel in your heart of hearts. I bet you feel that the current alignment is a mistake, that you've been manipulated into having to vote on a plan that you explicitly rejected from the earliest days of this process. I bet you sense that if you allow this process to continue on now, there will be no turning back, no matter what the amended draft environmental impact statement shows about the shallow tunnels and co-location. Minneapolis will have no recourse then, because the people pushing this project through are the same ones who will be in charge of passing on the acceptability of the results of that study. I think you must feel it's wrong for the city to have to vote without this information, and that the Met Council, an unelected group of officials, should not be able to pressure the city into approving it, any more than it's okay for Rick Perry to defund a government unit because it wouldn't do what he wanted, allegedly. I know some people are afraid of losing the federal funding if a different route is selected. But I've always been told you're not supposed to make decisions from a basis of fear. I think if you take the courageous stand and look at other options, there will be new avenues open to us as far as funding that may not be apparent now. I bet you feel that the alignment that would have served...
Thank you, Mrs. Lowe.
Oh,
sorry.
As stated before, you can submit your written comments for the public record too. You're welcome. Moving along, Speaker 33.
Hello, my name is Judy Meath, and I live at 2700 Kenilworth Place in Minneapolis, and I'm opposed to this project. The current Southwest LRT route was chosen, as you all know, under Hennepin County's agreement with Minneapolis that freight would go. This was prudent planning by people in your position. The draft environmental impact statement completed in December 2012 recommended against co-location of passenger and freight rail. Again, as you know, as we've heard tonight, according to common carrier law, railroads are required to carry whatever the customer wants to ship. You, Minneapolis City Council members, entrusted with this vote, cannot control what is shipped on these rails. In January 2014, the National Transportation Safety Board recommended that flammable freight be routed outside of urban areas. Seattleites are right now protesting the transport of ethanol in their streets. More recently, the feds warned that tank cars carrying flammable freight are too often dangerously weak. At least 15 major accidents involving crude oil or ethanol trains have occurred in the United States and Canada since 2006, including the July 2013 Lac-Mégantic, Quebec disaster that killed 47 people. Here are just some of the recent explosions involving freight rail trains carrying ethanol. These are explosions of trains carrying ethanol. February 2010, Tehachapi, California. February 2011, Arcadia, Ohio. October 2011, Tissilquah, Illinois. July 2012, Columbus, Ohio. August 2012, Plevna, Montana. Our very own TC&W freight train that runs through the Kenilworth corridor derailed in 2010. Freight trains do carry ethanol.
Thank you, Ms. Meath.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Moving down the line, we have Speaker 34, Vida Ditter, and then Speaker 35. There will be no Speaker 36, but there will be a Speaker 37, so 35, 37.
I spoke earlier with Vicki Moore.
Thank you. I respect that. Moving down the line, Speaker 35, Jay Badhart Bull.
Howdy, Mayor Hodges and council members. Thank you for your time. My name is J. Thomas Badhart Bull. I live in the 12th Ward at 3660 43rd Avenue South, and I work in the 6th Ward at 1414 East Franklin at the Native American Community Development Institute. We are also members of the Equity Commitments Coalition for the Southwest Line. One of the things that we're happy about is the inclusion of the 21st Street Station on this line, because we believe that it will afford our community, the most diverse community in Minnesota, with equitable access and weave together the Blue Line with the Southwest Line via improved Franklin Avenue bus service. And that would also go towards ensuring that our communities are working towards improving our disparities gaps in Minnesota. As you know, we suffer from the highest disparity gaps in the country. If we don't do anything about it and we don't move forward with the plan, we know what will happen, which is nothing. We're not going to work on improving those disparity gaps. So we believe that this is a step in the right direction, and we're supportive of the plan. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Speaker 37, James, if you could state your name and address for the record.
My name is James Lindbeck. I live at 4400 Harriet Avenue in the Kingfield neighborhood, and I had some thoughts to share, but I changed when I saw Louise Erdrich come and speak, and I just want to say that the only treasure that this city has that I know of as important as Cedar Lake is Ms. Erdrich, and I would encourage everyone to read her works and study who she is and listen to what she has to say. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Speaker 38.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members, Mayor Hodges. My name is Steve Kramer, business address 81 South 9th Street, home address 4832 11th Avenue South. Just here to reiterate the Downtown Council's support for the Southwest LRT line based on our Intersections 2025 plan, particularly goals related to leading the nation in transportation options and doubling our downtown residential population. I want to applaud the balanced and sensible solution that you reached through mediation. We believe strongly that the line has value in and of itself. It competes well, meets all the tests that are required to invest in a very competitive way Federal Transit Administration funds that will be invested someplace in this nation in transit. This line meets those tests. Also, very importantly, and others have made this point, it's the next step in the build out of a regional transportation system that does reinforce Minneapolis as the economic hub of this region and all that that means for all of us in terms of tax base, job growth, the ability to have resources to invest in all the things that make this city great. Finally, I'll just make a point that I made before. I have confidence based on my experience over 3 decades now that this project will be done right. That means that the environmental values that folks have articulated tonight and in many other previous hearings, as well as the hopes and aspirations of people in North Minneapolis, all will be fulfilled. So we urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll have Speaker 39, and just to note that there won't be Speaker 40 or 42, so it'll go 39, 41, and 43.
Hello, my name is Jeffrey Peltela. I live near the West Lake Station, and I'm the founding president of the nonprofit Public Works for Public Good. At last week's hearing, I asked Hennepin County to apologize for the crummy outcome of freight railroad now being right next to major stations from West Lake to Louisiana. At last month's city hearing, I concluded by saying that the proposed lack of terrestrial access at the West Lake Station would be regrettable. I think Minneapolis should also make an apology for its lack of public engagement over the last 2 to 3 years. Even now, the mediated agreement between the city and Met Council was arrived at in secret. For West Lake, at least, the MOU calls for an area-wide traffic study, including pedestrian issues. This must not just justify the present proposal, rather it needs to inform the station design and the pedestrian access to it. It's important for the scope of work to include a well-thought-out, multifaceted public engagement process. If community knowledge is to be tapped, it may actually be discovered that big improvements to West Lake can be achieved by improving the Beltline station. Indeed, grade separation of the roadway there already cries out to be done. Combining that with keeping the regional trail on the north side of the freight tracks until the new tunnel would be a huge help to West Lake, enabling other improvements. So now is the time with this vote to get on with it and have everyone follow through on making things right. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to Speaker 41, followed by Speaker 43 and 45.
Good evening.
My name is Kent Dild. I'm at 324 Gramercy Avenue in Minneapolis. I am definitely behind this particular project. I'm going to go off what I had originally intended to say a little bit. I'm a transit-dependent resident of North Minneapolis. There's a lot of discussion about how this isn't going to serve the folks in North, and I've heard a lot of things about the preservation of the park-like atmosphere through Kenilworth, and I am grateful for that, and I'm sure at some point I'll get to experience that myself. But the importance here is the continuation of the transit system in Minneapolis. We desperately need this in North. Some of the things that we've seen with the Green Line running through St. Paul, we had 3 stations there that were not going to be included. Nobody thought there was going to be any ridership. Already we're meeting or exceeding numbers that were projected out for 2030. So all of the people talking about how this is not going to serve North is not coming from people who live in North like I do. We're expecting that the transit-oriented development that comes with rail as opposed to bus service, which is impermanent, can be moved. The rail is a permanent solution. It will be a catalyst for development in the North End, bring jobs, bring employment to us, and something that we critically need. I'm going to call that quits. Thanks very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Moving to speaker 43, which will be followed by 45 and 46.
Greetings, I'm LaShella Sims, 915 Upton Avenue North, Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm an organizer with MICA, Metropolitan Interfaith Council on Affordable Housing. Tonight I'll be speaking in regards to equity and accountability. One of the things that I don't get in regards to the municipal consent, what Minneapolis is getting out of it, it seems like things have just been shifted around. And with that, I'll be reading from Circular FTA C4703.9. It's from the U.S. Department of Transportation, the Federal Transit Administration. Environmental Justice Policy Guidance for Federal Transit Administrative Recipients. That's you. The purpose of this circular is to provide recipients of Federal Transit Administration financial assistance with guidance in order to incorporate environmental justice principles into plans, projects, and activities that receive funding from FTA. This federal environmental justice was signed by the Clinton administration in 1997, and it's a law in dealing with doing no harm to populations of low-income and minority persons. Doing no harm means to do no harm to minority populations of low-income populations also. No harm includes no harm socially and no harm economically. And so as you make your plans and go forth, please keep this environmental justice legal document that everyone locally and local governments has to abide by. It is written law. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll continue down to speaker 45, followed by 46, 47, 48. Speaker Susu Jeffrey, name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Susu Jeffrey, speaking for Friends of Coldwater. My address in Bryn Mawr is 1063 Antoinette Avenue. I want to say that I am appalled at playing the race card. I think that the equity stuff is going to amount to Indian treaty, another Indian treaty. It's not even written down. There's nothing solid in what you're promising. Heated bus stops aren't even part of the money. High-end condos and increased rents in North Minneapolis means gentrification is coming. The premise of this whole project was that the freight rail had to go. What have you done to protect our city from that freight rail? Yeah, I mean, It's still there. My real concern is about the water. Am I going to be able to swim across Cedar Lake at sunset? The plans call for dewatering every day at 24,000 gallons. The tunnel would look like pilings 55 feet deep, 2 parallel solid pilings, 35 feet wide, 55 feet deep, and a half-mile long. And you're going to put those in the middle of the sponge that is the area between Cedar, Calhoun, and the wetland called Lake of the Isles. It's hard for me to believe that. I see this pattern of putting rail through parks. Minnehaha Park and Coldwater were sacrificed for the Hiawatha line. Bottineau is threatens Worth Park. This thing threatens the chain of lakes, which is the identity of Minneapolis.
Thank you, Ms. Jeffrey.
Parks, lakes, and water. You're going to lose it.
Thank you for your testimony. Moving down to Speaker 46, David Green, and it'll be followed by 47, 48, and then jumping to Speaker 51.
Good evening. My name is David Green. I live at 2724 Emerson Avenue South. This is our son, Julian. He's along for the ride tonight. I'm here speaking on behalf of Isaiah, a coalition of over 100 faith communities throughout the state of Minnesota. And we have supported Southwest LRT as an equity investment for Minneapolis for many years. And that comes out of conversations with Northside community groups, Northside business owners. This is what we have heard. What we have also heard is, while this is a necessary investment for equity, it's certainly not a sufficient one. And that is why you are hearing tonight about all of these equity commitments that people are looking for. These are things that would really help to really enhance this project and provide the connectivity that can multiply its equity effects. And I'm going to speak to 2 points specifically. One is the stations in RCAPS. Currently, the Met Council proposes to satisfy 74% of that need. We need to do 100%. It's just ridiculous that we would not do 100% shelter coverage in RCAPS in Minneapolis. And the second point is bus connectivity, which you've also heard about. And what we're talking about is these north side connections along Penn, Van Wyck, down to the Penn Station, Van Wyck stations. That's the gap in the bus network that's missing right now that is really needed to make this a catalyst for the north side. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Moving down to Speaker 47.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Hillary Reeves. I live at 210 North 2nd Street, number 205, Minneapolis 55401. And I'm here tonight on behalf of Transit for Livable Communities, which is at 2356 University Avenue West in St. Paul. Transit for Livable Communities strongly supports the Southwest Light Rail, and we support the work of the city council members to come to resolution. We support the elements included in the Memorandum of Understanding between the City of Minneapolis and the Met Council. We support elimination of the North Tunnel in the Kenilworth Corridor, making possible the station on 21st Street, and the improved connections for people walking, bicycling, or taking buses to the Southwest Light Rail stations in Minneapolis. We support the connected communities that come through expanded investment in transit. We believe that the Green Line extension will greatly expand affordable access to jobs for all Minneapolis residents and those in North Minneapolis. And in addition, we ask the city to work with the community to maximize the potential for equitable development at the Royalston, Van Wyck, and Penn Avenue station areas. We ask the Metropolitan Council in Hennepin County to use federal and state funding available to them to make the transportation infrastructure investments needed to jumpstart development in these and other station areas. We agree that transit riders deserve fares that are affordable, as well as warm and safe places to wait for buses and trains. This sentiment is shared by our members and by transit riders who live in Minneapolis and St. Paul and elsewhere. Toward this goal, we look for strong language about bus shelters and passenger comfort and transit fares in the new Metropolitan Council Transportation Policy Plan. This is currently out for public review and comment. We also asked the City of Minneapolis and its residents for their help in passing increased funding for transportation in 2015 through we urge.
Thank you, Ms. Reeves.
Thank you much.
Thank you for your testimony. We have Speaker 48, followed by Speaker 51, and that is the last speaker who is signed in.
Yes, excuse me, Michael Rothman, 2822 Cedar Lake Parkway. I'd like to call it Ground Zero, so I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak. What I'm for is mass transit, equity, economic development. I taught for 31 years at Minneapolis Community College, inner city community college. I'm sensitive to the needs of low income people and people of color, communities of color. My main concern, living 200 feet from the TCMW track, we have the lovely sight and sound of trains going through at 3 a.m. on a summer evening, on a Sunday evening when they weren't supposed to run, so that sort of thing. I have three major concerns, environmental concerns, that I think would be revealed in a thorough-going EIS. Number one, air pollution. This may have been mentioned before. The diesel fumes in the approximately 3-year construction period, I think any rigorous EIS would indicate would be violations of the Clean Air Act. Let's see, okay? Secondly, water. The young lady mentioned before the water table. What hasn't been mentioned is the 31% more rain incidents that this region is supposed to get due to climate departure, global warming, whatever you want to call it, which we saw this June, right? Record rainfall in June. Okay, to say that dewatering won't take place is absurd. That 1800 West Lake Street is not analogous to the situation. Or I'm a member of the Calhoun Beach Club. Their first floor was flooded this year due to the rain events. I've seen the water several feet high going across Cedar Lake Parkway on the track 200 feet from my home. So this does not sound like a good deal to put the shallow tunnel in there with the risk of cave-ins. It's, last but not least, train wrecks. Okay, ethanol. I've seen ethanol. I've seen coal. There was a coal car overturned 10 years ago. Least of our problems. I've seen ethanol. More recently, the flame, the symbols. I know they're calling ethanol. And most recently, a couple of weeks ago, I saw 4 cars hauling propane, LPG. Very flammable materials.
Thank you,
okay?
Mr. Rothman.
So I just want you to comply with state and federal law. Get a thorough and accurate EIS. Before you grant municipal consent. Do the right thing.
Okay. Thank you for your testimony. We'll move to Speaker 51, Mary Whites, and that is the last speaker we have signed in.
Mary Whites, 1122 Jefferson Street Northeast. Probably Northeast is maybe the least representative, the last funded, and the last to get bikes, parks. We're on the short end of everything. So I'm against this, mainly environmentally. I worked on the Highway 55 for maybe 10 years, and MnDOT didn't know, nobody wanted to do an environmental study. You have to do your environmental studies. Our lakes, our springs, they are so important to our environment. I think the main reason we have these LRTs is for the 1% want the Olympics to come here. Marilyn, Nelson Carlson, Richard Davis. It's a horrendous amount of money they're spending. And what we could do with public transportation in lieu of this would be probably unbelievable. And this is going through a path, it should be going through North Minneapolis. It shouldn't be going through the Lakes districts. We all know this. So, Greece had the Olympics, bankrupt. Russia had the Olympics, Putin payrolled them out. Chicago lost the Olympics. They should get on their knees and thank God. We don't need the Olympics. We need our neighborhoods. We need our parks. We need our education. We don't need stadiums. We need to represent the people of this city. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. See no one else has signed in subsequently. The clerk is saying no. Anyone wish to speak? See none. I will close the public hearing. We will reconvene members of the committee, so we now have a lot of new information compiled for the public record. We should be prepared to make final deliberation and a final vote at our adjourned meeting, and that'll be held 9:30 a.m. Wednesday, August 27th of this year. And I will hereby adjourn to that meeting.